Hello everyone, my name is Michael Conley and I want to welcome you to a new video series called Hitting the Mark. I probably should explain this title a little. In the ancient days, when longbow archers and their spotters would practice, the spotter would stand close to the target, and when the archer would miss the target, the spotter would yell back, "Sin," and that meant to the archer that he had missed the mark. Then through guidance, pointing, or direction, the spotter would tell the archer what adjustments to make until he hit the target, or in fact hit the bullseye. So that's where that title for this show came from, is we want to hit the mark, especially when it comes to the truth. So this word sin that would be yelled back to the archer is where we get the concept that sin is the transgression of the law. Law, of course, in our modern day has a very negative connotation. But we have a document called the Torah. And in truth, sin is the transgression of the Torah. The Torah itself is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, and it has nothing to do with law. The Torah means instructions, teaching, guidance, and pointing to. Now, as you can see, these videos, I'm doing this in my home, in my office, and behind me is one of my shelves with all of my research material on it. There is more on my right side, which you cannot see. So I'm hoping that you will have the time, take the time to listen to this series of teachings as we move on through this. I have been teaching the scriptures since 1975, and lately it was suggested to me that I take my teachings on a more public venue. So I am going to see if putting them on YouTube will be a good thing. I hope it's a good thing for you. Okay. Moving on, when we look at this, we want to use the scriptures to help us hit the mark. And in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 15, we're told that Yeshua, or Jesus, said that if you love me, keep my commandments. Now, through the years, I have taught on many different subjects, from daily living to finance to end time events. And right now, I'm going to begin this series on end time events. Just back a few days, November the 13th, we had a disaster in Paris. A few years ago, we had something called a housing bubble. After that, we had a GM bankruptcy. When you look at insane weather patterns that this nation and other nations are going through, and then you look at wars that last for years, it's very difficult to keep a proper perspective, and especially in light of that to maintain our values and our faith. However, in all of this, the one thing we must hold on to is that God is in control. But not just any God, the one true God. The God that has an only begotten Son named Jesus. And it is through belief in that name and loving Him that we can make sense out of a truly senseless world. So, in regards to end-time events, where do we start? And I'd like to start with what I believe is a very important issue of our current time, and that is Islam. No one wants to talk about Islam. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't get it out in the open, so to speak, we're going to continue to be misinformed as we have been in the past about Islam. We need to know the truth because the scriptures tell us in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 32, that if you know the truth, it will set you free. It has been brought to my attention lately that according to polls, many Muslims do not, nor have they ever read the Quran. And that's also true of a huge number of Christians. They go to church, but they listen to a sermon, but they don't necessarily read and study and look into it themselves. Now, we're told that Islam is peaceful, but is that the truth? If it is the truth, if Islam is peaceful, then why did Muhammad, upon his death, engage in 66 different battles, different campaigns, killing Muslims, Arabs, Jews, and Christians alike who did not bow to Islam? If Islam is so peaceful, why are so many verses in the Quran talk about killing infidels or those who resist Islam? 109 times in the Quran it talks about killing infidels. That's one verse in every 55. If Islam is so peaceful, why isn't there one Muslim country that allows free speech or freedom of religion? The truth of all this is recorded in history about what Muhammad did during his life and what is in the Quran. We have 1,400 years of recorded history. And now we can add to that historical findings from sunken ships in the Mediterranean that reveal a great deal about what Islam was doing on the Mediterranean Sea. So, in order to understand Islam, we really have to understand Muhammad. And to do that, we need to take a look at the environment that this young man grew up in. Muhammad was born in Mecca, and when you, about the year 570 AD, when you look at the Saudi Arabia of his day, number one, they worshipped over 300 idols, different idols. There were no prophets in the Arab side of this. There were no courts, no judges, no police. It was, if anything, kind of every man for himself, and the power and strength of one clan over another. So here is this young man born into this condition. He was born, his father had passed away shortly before his birth. His mother's name was Amina, and he was born in the house of his uncle Talib. So his father dies. Shortly afterwards, his mother passed away. Then his uncle dies. I'm sorry, his grandfather dies. And he ends up in the house of his uncle. And his uncle was a caravan trader. And so Muhammad at a young age was able to go with his uncle and travel the length and the breadth of Saudi Arabia as he marched across the sand on these caravans. Now, we come to this point. It's a huge turning point in young Muhammad's life. He is on Mount Hira, and he tells us that the angel Gabriel came to him and gave him a message. And basically that message was monotheism. Well, that is rather ironic that that would happen, because monotheism was already present in our world. Did you know that Yemen at one time was Christian? Syria at one time was Christian, as was Jordan and Lebanon. The entire top of North Africa was Christian. We have the Byzantine Empire. A large part of Turkey was Christian. If you look in the New Testament, the 7 churches of Revelation came from that area of Western Turkey. We will never know how great a ministry Yeshua or Jesus' 12 disciples had, because they were the ones who initiated all of what I just covered. They traveled and suffered and paid the price preaching a monotheistic God, one God. It was already here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, he leaves this cave on Mount Hira, and he begins to set about to start to preach to his Arab brethren, who are idol worshippers. And now he wants them to worship one God. In the next video, I'm going to continue from this point, and I think that you will enjoy watching how this develops. So thank you very much for listening. God bless you, and I hope to see you the next time.